George, thank you so much for that terrific introduction. Thank you for the plug for my 0 to 1 book. Certainly, any additional royalty checks are very much appreciated, and so thank you for that plug. I am, in my brief comments here, I'm going to offer 3 contrarian ideas for the future, where things are going with technology and computers, and I thought I would try to double these 3 ideas up as a sort of book review of Gilder's terrific book, Life After Google. And so I'm going to give you 3 contrarian ideas, but I'm going to weave in a little bit of a book review of Life After Google as well. One of the things that's always difficult about talking about the future is that we don't really know what's going to happen for sure. It's not that deterministic. I think it's even hard to know what happened in the past. So let's start by talking about the history of the computer age and the history of the future, the way people talked about the future in the past and the way they thought, where was the computer age going to go? And if we'd been assembled in 1969, the future of computers was going to be massive centralization. It was giant databases, giant AI-like computer intelligences that would run everything. It was like IBM, it was HAL transposed in the Space Odyssey movie, one letter off from IBM. It was one of the early Star Trek episodes. They come to the planet Beta, which thousands of years earlier had been, somebody had unified the planet and left a computer program that ran the whole planet. And all the people were sort of peaceful but very docile. Nothing ever happened. And as usual, they sort of follow the prime directive and convince the computer to self-destruct. They don't follow the prime directive and then sort of leave everything in disarray. But the future of the computer age circa 1969 was centralization, a few large companies, a few large governments, a few large computers that controlled everything. Fast forward to 1999, the future of the computer age was going to be massive decentralization. It was sort of libertarian, anarchist. It was sort of the corollary to the end of the Soviet Union was that information had this decentralizing tendency, and that the internet was going to fragment things, and it was going to be this sort of anarchic libertarian place. And if we fast forward to 2019, the consensus view of the future today, I would submit, is that the pendulum has somehow swung back all the way to 1969. And the consensus view is, again, that it is about large centralization, Google-like governments that sort of control all the world's information in this super centralized kind of way. And I think the life after Google thesis that I agree with and endorse is that if we look at this past, and people got it terribly wrong in 69 and things were going to go to decentralization 99, it actually started going back the other way. From the point of view of 2019, even if I'm hesitant to talk about the absolute future and where this all ends ultimately, perhaps the contrarian thing is to say that maybe the pendulum can swing back, and that things can swing back towards more decentralization, more privacy, and things like that. And this is sort of what seems to be at least contrarian, and at least something that we should always take more seriously. If you want to frame it in terms of the buzzwords of the day, in terms of crypto and AI, it is easily understood by people. It's always understood that crypto is somehow vaguely libertarian, but we never are willing to say the opposite, which is that AI, if crypto is libertarian, then AI is communist, and it's because it's centralized. It's the computer knows more about you than you know about yourself. It is totalitarian. Communist China loves AI and dislikes crypto, and that we at least have that we should at least consider the possibility that Silicon Valley is probably way too enamored of AI, not just for technological reasons, but also because it expresses this sort of left-wing centralized zeitgeist. And so I think the first sort of contrarian idea I have is that perhaps it's time for the pendulum to swing back, and life after Google, at its core means that we are going to go back from this very centralized world today towards a more decentralized one. That seems to me to be the correct thing to bet on. Now, the second contrarian idea that is, of course, we can sort of talk about how fast these things are happening and how much is happening in technology generally. And it's one of these things where we live in a world of incredible scientific and technical precision. We can measure Avogadro's number or the fine structure constant in physics or other things like this to many, many significant figures. But when we talk about the nature of the progress of science and technology and how fast science or technology are progressing, we do this in the most qualitative way with incredibly little precision. And are we accelerating in scientific and technical fields? Are we progressing, but at a slower pace? How fast is this? And with respect to that question, we tend to only get these sort of fairly vague answers. And I would submit that the sort of consensus in sort of both a Silicon Valley and a sort of academic context is that we are doing great and everything is just moving super fast. It's sort of all these forms of accelerationism, and we can debate whether it's utopian, a la Kurzweil, the singularity is near, all you need to do is sit back and eat some popcorn and watch the movie of the future unfold, or perhaps it is dystopian, a la all the science fiction movies from Hollywood, and the robots are going to kill you, or you're going to be in this matrix, and we're sort of accelerating to utopia or accelerating to dystopia. And the somewhat contrarian thesis I have on this is always that perhaps the progress is not as fast as advertised, and that we've been in this world where things have been slower, and they've been slower for quite some time. One cut on this is always to differentiate the world of atoms and bits, and that since the 1970s we've had a narrow cone of progress around atoms. Around bits. Computers, internet, mobile internet, software. These have been advancing fairly quickly. The world of atoms somewhat more slowly. When I was an undergraduate at Stanford, I would in the late 80s. I would say that almost every engineering field, in retrospect, was a bad field to go into. It was already obvious that you shouldn't go into nuclear engineering, aeroastroengineering weren't that good. But even all these other fields were not going to do that well in the decades ahead, because electrical engineering was still okay. Computer science was the really good field to go into in the late 80s. All the other engineering fields, it was just regulated to death. There wasn't that much you could do in the world of atoms. And it turned out that we had a lot of slowed progress. And I think that if we sort of analyze this question of the rate of scientific progress politically, and think of it as sort of university professors or entrepreneurs or venture capitalists exaggerating about how much good they're doing and how great they are, we understand that the incentives are always to exaggerate and to say that we're just around the corner from curing cancer, we're around the corner in all these different things, and yet it's been in some significant way slower over the last 40 or 50 years. Certainly, one of the concerns I would have is that that perhaps the danger is that, if anything, that things are slowing down even more at this point, and that the sort of world of very fast progress in bits is actually starting to slow down. And if we look at the rate of progress in Silicon Valley, it was sort of charismatic in this because it was the one place where things were still happening relative to the rest of the U.S. And it's become a lot less charismatic in the last 5 years. If you sort of think about the vibe in 2014, even as recently as 2014, it was sort of this was the place where the future was being built. In 2019, the big tech companies are probably as self-hating in some ways as the big banks were in 2009, and there's sort of a sense that it's not quite working. And so, if you sort of, again, to pick on Google a little bit here, the Google propaganda of the future was all going to be bits, It was all going to be sort of more automation. The story in 2014 were things like Google Glasses, so you could identify anybody you looked at any time. It was the self-driving car. I would say these aren't like that big a set of innovations. Probably a self-driving car is a step from a car, but not as big as a car was from a horse. And so you can sort of debate quite how big these things are and how to quantify them again. But that was still the narrative that was very intact in 2014. And when you fast forward to 2019, it's striking how there's absolutely no narrative of the future left. Google doesn't even talk about the self-driving car very much. There's a sense that it may still happen, but it's further in the future. The expected time seems to be getting further away. Every passing year, the expected time is getting even further into the future. And so there's sort of the sense that perhaps there's this danger that we have slowed progress, even in tech, even in the world of information technology. One of the ways this stagnation thesis sort of was embedded in the language is the word technology, of course, had a very different meaning. In the 1960s, technology meant not just computers, but also rockets and supersonic aviation and underwater cities and the green revolution in agriculture and biotechnology and new medicines and all these things, because all these things were progressing on many fronts. And today, if you use the word technology, it is often synonymous with information technology and probably just the software internet part of that, because that's the only part that has been moving, that has been progressing in recent decades. And the danger is that even that has slowed down a lot, that somehow Silicon Valley is consolidated into some larger companies. It's gotten harder for new companies to break through, and it's gotten harder because small companies are good at doing new things, and people are doing fewer new things than the big companies are more dominant. And so I think the second cut on the Life After Google book in these terms is always what I think is the sort of Gilder's always super optimistic, but there is like a small undercurrent of pessimism to the book. And the undercurrent is, the specter that haunts life after Google is that maybe this current regime is going to go on for a really long time. And, there was life after television, but life after Google may take, it will happen eventually, but it may take a little bit longer, and that that there is a danger that we're in this somewhat slowed, somewhat stagnant world. So that's sort of a second idea that I think we need to always grapple with a lot, that maybe we're in this world of tech stagnation. Third contrarian idea I will give you is sort of a qualification on my first two ideas, because I think the first one was it's about pendulum's going to swing back to decentralization. Second one is yes, it's swing back, but it's just going to be slow because everything is slowed, and we're in this world of stagnation. But a qualifier to both the back to decentralization and the stagnation idea is that at the end of the day, technology is about people. It's not about inanimate forces. It's not some kind of Marxist historicism about the way things are inevitably going to happen. And so the stress is always on individuals, small teams that start companies, that start new projects, that do new things, and it's a question of human agency. It's not deterministic. We have every possibility to do these things, but at the end of the day, it is up to us to make it happen. And it's not set in stone that it's going to happen one way or another. And so, in conclusion, I think sort of one other gloss on life after Google is that perhaps you should think of the title as with life being italicized or stressed or put in bold, and that the critical thing is there is life goes on, and in particular human life, humanity goes on, and that even though the dominant narrative is that tech is about inanimate forces or Marxist historicism, it really is at its core about human beings, and we should always if we have to bet on it, we should always bet on the indomitability of the human spirit.